So my name is Heather Buck, if you're not familiar with me. I am the coordinator for Marble Peg, which is the Maumee River Basin Partnership of Local Governments. We do actually cover from Fort Wayne, Indiana, all the way to Toledo. We have several partners, community partners, many of whom are here today, who do pay in dues that helps us put on these sort of meetings. And we have a conference in the fall. If you're not familiar, we have mayors and elected officials summits. So we really try to bring everyone together and highlight what's going on in the basin, out of the basin that can help us. So that's what we're trying to do today. More information's on the website. You can just sort of Google MRBPLG, which is a little bothersome for me because it's not really Marble Peg, but we'll get over that. So today I have Mayor Bob Armstrong, the mayor of Defiance, and also the chair of Marble Peg, and he'll be leading us through and welcoming some of our more distinguished guests. Everyone is distinguished, but we've got a few representatives and special guests here today. So if you can, give him your attention. Again, make sure your cell phones are turned down, and feel free to get up and shimmy if you need to. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Mark, we have an echo here. Is there a way we could adjust this so it doesn't echo? Keep trying here. Is that better? Is it better for everybody out there? The echo kind of gone now? Good. Welcome, everyone. I've been excited for this day. Honestly, I've been able to contact a lot of mayors that I haven't had the opportunity to meet before. I've been able to, it's kind of like getting together a family reunion. We've all got the same concerns, and we're all here to talk about what we can do and how we can handle our CSO concerns that we have. Honestly, it's been fun putting this together. We've been, I think our journey through all of this has been kind of long. We've been involved with CSOs and stuff now over 10 years, most of us have, and we're looking forward to some way of finding a way to where we can possibly work together and do the things that we need to do so all of us can get together and help each other out. I've had an opportunity to meet some very interesting people, and I think one of the most interesting that I've met is Tinka Hyde. Tinka is with EPA District 5, and our conversations have been really open and direct. We've been able to talk many times. She probably feels I've got her on speed dial, but we've been able to talk many times about our problems. We're expecting a couple more from the state of Ohio. Paul Novak's here now. Okay, he just came in. And we'll be able to talk with the DEFA side, the financial side, and we'll be able to talk with the compliance side today. We have representatives here. And come on, Paul, come on up. Good morning. So we're very anxious for the day. I think our main reason of sharing is with everyone is so we can all hear what we've all learned, I guess, from the Times. There's a lot of different groups out working on this type of a situation and all going kind of different directions. And so I would like to, in some way, pull us all together. Pulling us all together means not only just us mayors working on our problem, but it's involving EPA. Saying how can we get it done the best way. I think that there's been some changes in EPA over the years that allows us to look at this in a different manner. For instance, EPA within their structures has an affordability cause, and their affordability cause is 2% of your average household income is what that they would expect that you would be able to afford in your budgets for improvements that would aid us with our water qualities. I think when we look at that, it gives us, you can take that that 2%, if you would, and put it over a 20-year period, and it would tell you probably about what amount of money that you would have to spend to help you with your project. You want to get the best bang for your buck, so probably the best way to do that would be sit down with EPA and talk with them. This is what we have, this is what we can spend, and what can we do to help out with our water quality issues. And I think we're at that point, I believe, that where we now can talk with EPA and plan with EPA rather than I'll have a plan and I'll see how it goes and finally we'll talk to EPA about it. I think we're at a point where District 5 has recognized that each of us have a challenge in our cities. The challenge is, how are we going to be able to afford what we're doing, and how much can you raise a water rate? You know, you just can't. And those challenges are recognized by EPA, both federal and state. So before we have the first presentation, I would like to recognize some people that are here. Wes Farbach is with Portman, Senator Portman's. Ryan Walker is here representing Bob Latta's office. We have Ann Orr here, Sherrod Brown's office. And am I missing a rep? Marcy Capter's rep's supposed to be over here, but she isn't. Along with all of our mayors, Paul in the back, Paul Novak has just came in, and from EPA, State of Ohio, and Tinka Hyde from District 5 EPA. So I would like to have Tinka come up and just say a few words before we start. We've invited her. She's came all the way from Chicago. It's cold out, but it can't be that cold for her because she's used to that. So Tinka, would you like to say a few words?
Morning, everyone. Thank you very much, Mayor Bob, for inviting me back. I always look forward to meeting with folks, and I am particularly interested today in hearing the presentations. Sounds like there's some innovative approaches that folks want to talk about today, and I am hopeful that through these dialogues we'll be able to continue to work to address the water quality issues that we're all trying to deal with. Briefly, I'm just going to remind folks about the integrated planning approach that EPA identified about a year ago as an opportunity to look for ways to work even more effectively together on these challenges. So I'm going to highlight some of the principles and components of it, and then talk a little bit about some recent discussions that are frankly ongoing still on financial capability. I think there's a lot of discussion on that point. And there was recently a meeting, I think last week in DC, to talk about some of those challenges and how to move forward. And then just a little plug for innovation and sustainability as well. So just a reminder, the integrated approach, it really is about working together to try to find common ground on approaches that all of the municipalities can use to evaluate their water quality requirements and develop a comprehensive plan to meet those. But it also means allowing communities to sort of balance those requirements with the other needs that you have in your community, and trying to figure out which are the most pressing health needs that you need to deal with first. And then also, hopefully, looking for how you might match some of those efforts that you're putting on to increase the benefits and the beauty within your community as well. There's several things that are going on in a variety of communities, I know in Ohio, that are attempting to address their Clean Water Act requirements and at the same time improve amenities within their own community, which I think is really a twofer. It helps the community appreciate some of the efforts Sadly, sewers are not something that people like to talk about a lot. It's not a popular topic, and it's in the ground for the most part, and people really have a hard time seeing the benefit of spending a lot of money on that sort of thing. But when we can couple that with other things that might be a little bit more obvious for the community as a benefit, I think that's really where we start winning on some of these efforts. Some of the major components in the integration plan that I wanted to talk about is, first of all, identifying and inventorying your water quality needs and related projects. That's really important. Get a good handle on what you have and what you need to do. And then also financial assessment and financial capability analysis. And Mayor Bob mentioned that. That's key as well. And the information that we can share on that will really be helpful as you talk with us or Ohio EPA, trying to make sure that we all understand what are the challenges, assessing your priorities and figuring out what are the most important things to get done first, second, and third, and then integrating these projects into a schedule. And the advantages of that approach allow sequencing of most important wastewater and stormwater projects to ensure that the environmental and public health needs are met first, and accommodating innovative solutions to the extent that you've got some creative ideas on how to address this. We certainly want to hear about those. These are difficult times, and these are big projects, and the more we can come up with new ideas on how to address those, I think the better off we're going to be. Just a little bit on the financial capability. Last week, as I mentioned, EPA and local governments continued an ongoing dialogue to clarify how financial capability of a community will be considered when developing implementation schedules for communities projects related to the Clean Water Act requirements. EPA, as we implement the integrated framework, our guidance on financial capability assessment will continue to be valuable for evaluating the level of burden placed on a community by necessary Clean Water Act requirements. Through ongoing dialogue, though, EPA is going to develop some further clarification, and some of the things we're going to be looking at is the need to consider financial impacts on all Clean Water Act requirements facing communities in order to improve prioritization of investment. The fiscal implications of and regulatory framework for variable rate structures that would allow lower income households to be able to better afford vital water, wastewater services. That is a message that we have heard loud and clear, that is a challenge that all of the communities are facing. When you put in these new infrastructures, it costs money and you're going to have to raise your rates. And you already have a percentage of your population that struggles to pay their current rates, so raising your rate just creates more of a challenge for a portion of your community. And how do we deal with that? And so that's just one of the things that folks are going to continue to work on. The role of medium household income in developing compliance schedules, and then the role of other community-specific factors, including obligations under the Safe Drinking Water Act for your drinking water, for example, in developing appropriate compliance schedules. So the reminder in this for folks that are walking down this integrated planning approach is that communities can always submit information that they think is pertinent for the work that they have, that their community is facing under the Clean Water Act and even under the Safe Drinking Water Act. I know our original conversations under the integrated planning really focused on Clean Water Act. However, I think it's important to make sure that we have a whole picture of what you're facing so that we can have a broader dialogue and a more informed dialogue regarding what some of the issues are. EPA's guidance provides flexibility in the framework for considering site-specific factors, so that's why it's so important for communities to really share with us the information that you have that you need to deal with in your efforts. And as Mayor Bob suggested, speaking with us earlier is always better than getting to the point where you've got your plan and then you come and talk to us, because frankly at that point we're probably just starting to have questions and you're probably ready to start designing. And that's always a not a very fun place to be because it is, we're generally perceived as being a problem at that point. So bring us in earlier so we can have those conversations and hopefully get on the same page. My last remarks are going to just be about innovation and sustainability. I mentioned this the last time I was here as well. Focusing on innovation, I think, is key, including green infrastructure. There's a lot of new important tools out there that I think we can use to address the problems and actually benefit your communities as well. Green infrastructure, as you know, rain gardens, bioswales, green roofs, and the like, can help reduce the amount of runoff that's going into your sewer systems, thereby reducing the amount of stormwater that needs to be managed. And so, as a result, hopefully you can reduce your overflows and save money in the process. Improving gray infrastructure. Communities are having increased success in adopting new gray infrastructure technologies that may provide value-added benefits, such as greater operational flexibility, as well as greater energy efficiency. And so I'm really looking forward to the conversation that Mayor Bob is going to be talking about some of the ideas they have in Defiance, and Lima is also going to be presenting some of their ideas as well. And gray-green hybrid approaches, where you're combining both gray and green to optimize your investment. We need to find ways to strategically lower the costs and increase revenues for all of the communities to address their water and wastewater issues. And so sustainability, I think, is an important piece to that. Full cost pricing is a challenge, and I think will remain a challenge as we move forward, but it's an important piece of the puzzle to kind of keep in mind how much it actually costs you to provide these services to your communities. And if there's anything we can do to help to educate folks, we are more than happy to do that. Asset management approach to systematically identifying and planning maintenance repairs is key as well. Having up-to-date and accurate information on infrastructure components and needs, the utility can actually plan for maintenance and replacement when needed, and then better budget and optimize the full life of your equipment and infrastructure. And then finally, energy efficiency. Energy costs are typically 25 to 30% of the wastewater plant's O&M costs. In Region 5, in 2009 through 2011, we worked with Indiana on an energy efficiency pilot where we worked with 10 drinking water and wastewater utilities to measure energy use and look at low-cost options for reducing their energy uses. And as a result of this, in the 2-year time period, the 10 utilities consumed 15% electricity and 34% less natural gas, resulting in cost savings to the community, which is always an important thing when you are trying to sort of manage your revenues and your costs. So with that, I will close, and I look forward to the conversations that we're going to have today. Thanks.
Yes. Thanks, Tinka. I think all of us are in different phases. We're all, we're just like in Defiance, we're in our 5th year. You know, we've separated sewers. We've got to a point to where we've realized that we can't go on. We can't afford what we're doing. We did go to Columbus with facts in hand and talked with Mr. Novak, with Paul, and got a 3-year reprieve, a free year to stop what we're doing, take a look at it, and to see if we couldn't come up with something better. It's that it's led us to a trip to Georgia, where we viewed what they were doing in Columbus, Georgia, and leads us to our presentation today. So with that, I would like to introduce the people from URS, Mike Fulmer and Tinka and Tiffany Mag will come up and do their presentation.
sure that I need it, but okay. Thanks, Mayor, for the introduction. And we're very excited to be here today to talk through some of the innovative ideas that we've been working with the city on. And the thought of having a 1-hour presentation from an engineering firm, you know, I'm going to be leaning heavily on a bunch of graphs and pictures over here, so it's not totally boring. So if anybody over there is having a hard time seeing, you might want to move over, but I'm going to work a lot off the screen over here in the PowerPoint presentation. As Mayor said, I'm Mike Fromer with URS, project manager, and have been working with the City of Defiance on their long-term control plan as well as other communities. Tiffany is the lead project manager or project engineer and has been working with the city as well through the program. So I'll probably skip over some of this at the beginning. You know, it's always important to talk a little bit about the history. You know, anytime you're looking forward and doing a plan. The city has been extremely proactive in their activities. They've been working since 1998, you know, out working with the Ohio EPA and agency, and working with them back and forth in a very cooperative, you know, manner. The original long-term control plan 98, the addendum that was approved in 2003 was the sewer separation, about $50 million for 20 years. Then the consent order was approved in 2010, and the projects that were required by the city were 20 groups of sewer separation and 4 projects for river water intrusion. These projects were very prescriptive. They were go in this area, provide a new sanitary sewer, all your interceptors in the floodplain, they're just reline them and rehab them. So as we start talking through some of our strategies today, you're going to see that in reflection, this type of program layout is not one that's set up for cost-effective solutions. Once again, the city was very proactive and worked through groups of separation through 2005 and 2010. And it's really important to note that the city has made a lot of benefit to the environment. Okay, they've reduced a tremendous amount of overflows and pollution, and they've closed, you know, how many overflows, Tiff? 12 overflows. They have 44 overflows, which probably needs to go on record for a community this size. Is probably the most per capita in the United States. But they've done a lot of good work, but like the mayor said, it's just getting to the point where they have to switch horses in order to be able to afford it. Okay, once again, 20 group areas, the river water intrusion. I think the important note here, and this map's hard to look at, but the city is blessed with 3 rivers. You have the Maumee River that cuts east and west through town. It also has the Auglaize that comes up from the south, and then it has the Tiffin River that comes in kind of in the northwest area. Also, it's important to note that about 85 to 90% of their watershed is agricultural. So there's a lot of non-point source that's upstream and adding to their to the rivers and the pollutants. Simply put, you know, we talked about the cost implication. You know, anybody that's doing sewer separation, it's very expensive. When you get in and start doing sewer separation, you end up, there's all kinds of utility conflicts, there's pavement restoration. You know, they've probably seen about everything that you can imagine in the 6 group areas. You know, new infrastructure beside old infrastructure that collapses that needs rehab. So, not here to talk about this, but it's one of those things that, you know, when you really get in there and think about sewer separation down residential streets, it really is a total rehabilitation of the area. So, once the original 50 million was projected out with these new costs, they were looking at something more about 120 million. When you start to look at that, you can see that, you know, the mayor mentioned 2%, and you can see that, you know, from this bar graph that their original program was 2.14%. When you inflated the new cost, it was going to be 3.7. And, you know, anything I've seen on CSO programs, that's off the charts, okay? 2.5% is extremely high. Also, the other thing, you know, we have the annual cost per household, where the 2% threshold, they were almost projecting as double, okay? And really what, you can talk about 2% and all that stuff, but what really comes home to roost is when you look at monthly rates. Okay, in 2011, the average rate was about $62 a month. If they would have taken the program out to 2027, it would have been $145 for an average residential user. So not only do you have the extreme impact on the residents, but then when you look at a community like Defiance, they have a lot of industrial and commercial customers. That starts to really weigh on those customers. And also it inhibits them to attract new businesses to the area to replace maybe the old industry. So once again, not to focus on the bad here, but this is the reason why the mayor and city management said, okay, we got to stop this moving train. So we were, once again, and those of you who have worked with Mayor Armstrong, we do things proactively in Defiance, and we were very proactive and went down to the state agency, have met with them several times. We're currently working on a consent order modification to give the 3-year extension and to start to look at more affordable control. The original plan was elimination of the overflows and total separation. And we're going to be looking at some integrated planning and adaptive management strategies. And also we're going to look at some community benefits. And we're actually, Tiffany and I are going to go through 3 examples in the city where we've used the integrated solution on one and we're looking at the other ones, and you can see there's a big benefit. So the 3-year extension, that's pretty much broken down to the major components of the long-term control plan with the CSO guidance. You have the system characterization, the alternative analysis, and financial affordability. Okay, first thing is the administrative process. Anytime you get into a long-term control plan, you got to figure out how is this plan going to be developed administratively, okay? In the city, we decided the best framework was we were going to have a technical committee that was put together that would include Tiffany and I, plus the data, kind of the folks that can assist us in collecting the data, but more of the technical folks in the engineering department, the collection system, the construction, the operations staff, and the stormwater staff. This is a group of people that get together. We talk about numbers, how we're going to get additional data, what it means, what's going on in the system, okay? And we work together and put together recommendations, and these recommendations are taken to the executive committee. These are folks that, include the mayor, the finance director, city manager, or city administrator, the city engineer, the law director, and they have the best feel for the community and what the constituents want. So this is how the technical committee makes the recommendations to them. They will be providing that input on the decision-making process. Once again, proactive coordination with the Ohio EPA is another part of the process, working with them on the solution, okay? Okay, key strategies. First thing is program affordability. When developing this long-term control plan update, we're going to go into this. I know this is hard to believe, but engineers sometimes are very good at details but can miss the big picture. We want to go into this knowing that there's $20 million available for the remaining 20 years to spend on CSO control. Okay, it doesn't do us any good to come up with alternatives that are, tunneling, large treatment plant upgrades, to get secondary treatment, get everything conveyed to the plant, where we're looking at $50 to $80 million. Okay, we have to look at our focus and come up with our solutions based on what the remaining affordability is. Okay, adaptive management strategy. We've kind of tailored a specific program for the city here that's based on the Indianapolis model. Okay, now it's important to know Indianapolis is a much larger city than the city of Defiance, so everything has to be proportionately. You can't take that model that they're using and put it here. It won't work because of the resources and everything. So, but what we're going to do, and Tiffany's going to show you, we're going to identify specific problems in the system and we're going to fix those. It's much cheaper to do specific fixes than broadcast fixes like sewer separation for the entire sewer shed. And then the integrated planning approach. I've probably talked to 10 engineers about this, and I think everybody thinks about it a little differently, okay? I look at it as creative engineering and maximizing your compliance, bang for your buck, okay? And we're going to show that, I have two graphics. Engineers put together graphics and charts, and that's how we communicate. But it's hard to see the example, and I can send the presentation out if anybody wants to see this. But a lot of people are viewing the integrated approach as, okay, we only have to spend 2%. We have stormwater needs, we have CSO, SSO needs, and we have asset management needs. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to try to get all that done for 2%. Okay, and that doesn't really seem to be the spirit of integrated planning to me. That just seems like you're trying to cap the compliance requirements of each. What we're going to try to do is this graph down here is we're going to overlap the improvements. Okay, we're going to have projects that simultaneously do CSO compliance and stormwater compliance. So it's hard to show, but if this is your CSO compliance circle, that's how much control you're going to get. Down here, if you can overlap it, you're going to get a lot more CSO control. Okay, so that's going to be the goal, and you're going to see how we've kind of attacked that in some of the areas. Okay, adaptive management strategy. One of the things that I mentioned is we want to find specific fixes and specific solutions. Okay, because it's going to be more cost effective. You really need to stay away from very prescriptive requirements, and you need to stay away from large infrastructure, tunnels, large storage tanks, things that everything is banked on that, because there's so much money invested in those. It just takes away your flexibility to be creative and do specific fixes throughout the system. The way to do that is a data-driven approach. Like I said, Tiffany's going to talk a little bit more, but we've got a lot of data in the system, and we're using a lot of data that they've already been collecting and coming up with some great results that are going to show significant improvements. Next is cutting-edge solutions. Cutting-edge solutions and engineers don't go hand in hand, okay? But, because engineers are very conservative by nature, okay? But the more information an engineer gets and the more comfortable they are, they'll be more aggressive with their recommendations, okay? So the balance here is trying to get enough information so you can actually come up with some creative solutions, okay? The other thing on the integrated planning is when we look at these alternatives, we have folks in our office, we have our treatment plant guys, they're gray all the way, okay? And then we have our collection system guys who are more conveyance and stormwater, which I kind of fall in that. We kind of, I don't want to say we go both ways, but we're more gray and tend to float in the green occasionally. And then we have our green infrastructure folks that, they come from a different concept. But when we identify our problems, we set that team down, and you look at it and you try to come up with a common ground. And it's not always going to be a great uniform that has everything in it, but you'd be surprised at how much overlap you see. The other thing is the iterative decision-making process. When you do long-term control planning, you're kind of flying at this 20,000 feet level elevation. You're looking at everything in the city, okay? As you proceed with preliminary engineering and detailed design, you have to be able to reevaluate where you're at, okay? For example, if you have a large storage tank, we all put together per gallon estimates based on experience, okay? When you get into preliminary design and you start doing soil borings and you figure out that tank's in 100% groundwater, or that there's unstable soils, things change. And you have to be able to reevaluate that and adjust on the fly. You can't, just because you lock something in on your plan, you have to be able to adjust as you move forward. So next I'm going to turn over to Tiffany, and she's going to talk a little bit about the adaptive management strategy and how one of the projects that we've been able to yield from.
Okay, so we performed the system characterization to basically understand the city's entire collection system, and this included flow. You guys hear me back there? This included flow monitoring, which was performed throughout the entire collection system. So you can see on this map here, all of the red squares are the flow meters that we've had installed in the system from 2009 to 2013. This actually included 94 total metering locations. We had about 20 meters that It'll be just continuously moved throughout the system. This actually included some post-construction compliance monitoring and also some SSES projects. So not all 94 of these meters were put in, just for long-term control plan, but we were actually able to use all of the data to calibrate our hydraulic model. The city's consent order requires them to install temperature and level sensors in their infrastructure. The city actually has 19 of these sensors right now installed in both interceptors and river locations. And what these sensors do is they measure the temperature and level, and then you're able to actually look at that data and determine whether or not river water intrusion is occurring. So the sensor locations are shown on this map here. All 19 of the sensors are shown in green. It's kind of hard to see on this map, but I want to draw your guys' attention to sensors 1, 10, 11, and then 12 up there on the northwest side. Those are some of the areas that we did identify river water intrusion to be occurring and that I want to talk about on the next couple slides. Okay, this chart looks pretty confusing. So basically what this thing is saying is that there is a lot of river water intrusion in the city's sewers. I'm going to kind of try to give you guys a breakdown of how we develop that analysis. On the bottom here we have the river temperature of the Maumee in the red thicker line, and the Au Glaze is in the green thicker line. So you can see the temperature on the left axis, it's about 2 degrees Celsius. This was back in February of 2011, so of course, it was pretty cold at that time. Just above those lines, you see the interceptor temperatures in the thinner lines, the ones that are more sporadic and kind of all over the chart. And then you also have the river elevation, which is the orange thicker line, and that's plotted on the axis over to the right. So we actually do have elevation data, from the USGS gauges. So what you see here is, I'll come over to this side, the initial rainfall occurs right here in this location. I think this was February 28th. So you have the initial flush of the system from the catch basins and the other sources that are connected to the infrastructure. So you see a drop in the temperature and then a quick rise. And then a couple days later, as the river elevation continues to rise, you see another drop in the temperature. And then this drop stays for a couple days. And that actually shows that river water intrusion is occurring. So, for example, sensor number 1, you have the quick drop and then the rise. And then about a day later, you have another drop, and it stays down for about 2.5 days. So between here and here is where your river water intrusion is occurring in that sensor. So we also took this evaluation one step further, and we were able to identify the sequence that the intrusion occurs. So number 1 was first, and then number 12, and then number 11 happened next. It's a lighter blue, and then 10, and then 6, 7, and 3. So we're able to actually identify the locations that the intrusion comes in based on the time sequence of the temperature drops. Then the sensors also measure the level in the interceptors. So this is kind of used to confirm the conclusions of the temperature chart. You can see the trend. I know these are hard to see from probably in the back, but the trend is generally the same as the temperature. The level has a quick rise when the rainfall occurs, and then it kind of rebounds in the system. Then as the river elevation continues to rise, you see in this area over here, the level comes up and it stays up for an extended duration, and that's where the river water intrusion is occurring. Okay, the city's consent order outlines group areas that they have to take care of river water intrusion. And 2 of those are groups 31A and 31B, which are shown in the area that's highlighted in purple. So what we did is, instead of just assuming that the entire area in purple has river water intrusion and they need to address the entire area, we actually went ahead and took a look at the sensor data and figured out exactly where the river water intrusion is occurring. So as I mentioned earlier, numbers 11 up on the northwest east side and number 12 up on the northwest side both do have river water intrusion at those locations. And then on the south side of the Maumee River, numbers 1 and number 10 also have river water intrusion. Those were the first and second sensors to have the temperature drops, indicating that it is coming in at those locations. So we highlighted in yellow all the areas that the river water intrusion is occurring. And by looking at that data, we were actually able to identify that the surcharge that's being created by the intrusion at numbers 1 and 10 is actually backflowing into the areas in the west and to the south. So I have the red arrows, kind of showing that the intrusion is not happening there. It's coming from other areas and backflowing into that area.
We're estimating that, if we would have followed the letter of the consent order and rehabbed all of those, by just dealing with the yellow, we would take care of the problem, and it's probably 40% of the cost just to deal with the yellow part.
Yeah, so using the adaptive management strategy, you really do save costs because you identify exactly where the issues are rather than doing, a blanket approach and, lining all of these sewers. So, in accordance with the adaptive management strategy, we came up with a project that addresses multiple issues. This is kind of a hybrid of the integrated planning approach in this area. What we have here is, of course, there's river water intrusion issues on the entire interceptor that we have highlighted in yellow. There's also 4 CSO overflows in this area, so we have the CSO compliance issues. Also, the green box up there is the Kingsbury pump station. Anyone that lives in Defiance probably knows this is the biggest station in the entire city. The majority of the flows throughout the whole city are conveyed to this station. There's a lot of operation and maintenance issues at that station just due to the amount of flow that's coming into that station. And anytime there's an issue, it creates a lot of backups and surcharging throughout the system. So the adaptive management solution that we came up with was to relocate and replace the Kingsbury pump station and also to relocate the interceptor up and away from the banks of the river. So that would benefit, provide CSO control. It would eliminate river water intrusion. Also would eliminate upstream surcharging that is caused by both the river water intrusion and the operation and maintenance issues at Kingsbury. This will also reduce the O&M costs. Right now, the city spends on average about $63,000 per year just in maintenance costs, when pumps go down and they have to rebuild. And also, I think, Mike, if you want to give a little information about the electrical costs.
Yeah, another thing to look at is everybody wants to look at the FCA and say you have $20 million left. Well, during the system characterization, we look at and talk with Mark Leonard about his high capital or his high O&M expenses. By eliminating that pump station and reducing the electrical demand with higher efficiency equipment and eliminating the maintenance costs, he could be generating, or he could be spending an additional, I think $1.2 million in this project area. I mean, when you look at $70,000 of O&M costs, and so the concept would be to reduce the debt, to reduce the O&M costs. So if you increase the debt service with the capital improvements, you're not increasing your burden on the FCA.
And then another issue in this area is, of course, the access during the flood conditions. As you can see in the picture on the bottom right there, this was taken, I think, like a week or 2 ago when we had some snow melt and some rainfall, and it probably wasn't nearly as bad as what's usually seen in the city. When the river starts to rise, there's just no way to access this station unless you want to get a boat out. And then safety issues are another concern at the Kingsbury pump station. Right now they have a manual bar screen that they have to actually go down and rake off the influent there whenever there's debris and things that are caught. And this thing's also, I think it's 5 stories deep, so any type of access into that station is a safety issue. So this is the new alignment of the adaptive management solution. What we did is we pulled the Kingsbury pump station up and out of its old location right near the river and relocated it up here to some higher ground, kind of out of the banks of the river. We are abandoning the existing interceptor, which is shown in the black, the hatched line. It was, right along the river. It's easy to get river water intrusion in areas like that. And then we also have the purple would be the new interceptor, up to higher ground where you really significantly reduce, river water intrusion potential. And we're also going to be eliminating, or I'm sorry, controlling the 4 CSOs in the area and then also the operation and maintenance issues at Kingsbury. So you're able to, simultaneously address a lot of different issues with kind of an adaptive management, integrated planning approach. So I'm going to turn it back over to Mike for more information on the integrated planning approach.
Thanks, Tiff. The next, I want to talk a little bit about integrated planning and show a specific example that the city had a lot of success with. Once again, you're looking, we're looking at the three main categories of CSO compliance. There's all the typical suite of improvements, that can be done, whether they're collection system controls or storage or treatment, pump station upgrades, relief sewer, storage basins, inflow redirection, high rate treatment, alternative river water intrusion. We spent a lot of time looking at the CSO component, so we feel like we have a good handle on that. Next is the MS4 stormwater requirements. The city is an MS4 community. They also have compliance requirements associated with that. Some of the needs that come from that are, and improvements are stormwater conveyance, flooding, localized flooding mitigation, green infrastructure to improve the aesthetics and quality of life, plus dealing with the stormwater needs. And then the city recently has done a stormwater master plan that really kind of helped identify a lot of those needs as well. And then you have the asset management. The city hasn't undertaken an asset management program per se, but we've, through the system characterization, looked at the significant drains on the operations budget at the pump stations and the wastewater treatment plant. So the key here and what we're doing is identifying overlapping solutions that address the multiple compliance with one project. So, okay, here's a wonderful map. It's probably very confusing to look at from out in the audience, but this is the summary of issues stormwater related in the city. The city was able to send out questionnaires to their residents in 2011, spring of 2011, which was probably one of the wettest years in history. So we sent out, I think, 5,000 questionnaires and got 1,000 back, okay, which was also had staff members that had, I think, 25 plus years experience in the engineering department. And we interviewed them and said, okay, tell us everywhere where you have problems over the years in stormwater. So we were able to generate like a priority map, and that's what's shown here. And it's actually really scary. The CSO issues we're finding with the metering data is where there's stormwater problems, okay, which lends itself to the integrated approach. Probably the number one area down here was viaduct area along Clinton Street. And there's stormwater issues there. There's also CSO issues. Out on the Ayersville Road was another significant area. Out in the South Auglaize Interceptor, up north in Group 9, there's a bunch of issues. It just was amazing that when you look at the CSO data versus the stormwater complaints, they all fell on top of each other. So we had the groups 1 through 6 complete for separation. We were getting ready to go into the next group for CSO, the long-term control plan. It's like, okay, we know that the separation is not being cost effective. Maybe we can do something next in group 14. We're under the compliance schedule, so we've got to move forward. We don't want to pay stipulated penalties. So we move forward with an integrated approach project, and it was the group 14 area. And this was the number one stormwater area, identified it with problems in the city. It was also the next sewer separation area as well. The long-term control plan had $7.6 million allocated for this area. So we sat back and we said, okay, we gotta, we just can't go in and put new sanitary throughout the entire area because we've proven that that's just not going to be affordable, and we're going to kind of dig the hole a little deeper until we get approval from the EPA. So we went down the road. The first thing we did is we looked at all the compliance issues, stormwater and CSO. We have the red arrows represent the CSO overflows, and we have 6 of them in the area, A1 through A6, and we did flow metering of the area as part of the SSES, and we identified A1, which is over here, as the one of the biggest contributors, as well as the A6. We started looking a little further and doing some field investigations to figure out why the data was so high. And we realized that the city had a storm sewer program back in the 60s or 70s where they're going to separate storm sewers. There was this great plan that we're going to go through and provide all separate storm. Well, phase 1 was constructed, which is the light blue, but phase 2, the outlet, was never installed. So we have separate storm sewers that connect into the combined sewer. So we realized very quickly that there was a pretty significant source of inflow, coming into the system. The next area that's contributing to A1 was the viaduct area. This area is actually inverted. This is a high wall along the river, and so everything kind of flows back towards the viaduct. And during rain events, Clinton Street, which is one of the main roads in town, is shut down, and traffic has to be diverted. And there's also a bunch of Dairy Queen and small commercial establishments along Clinton as well. One time it was raining and I was out there, I was in the Dairy Queen parking lot and the water's just coming up. They use the parking lots for on-site detention system. So, and then we also have identified during the river stage some river water intrusion issue there. So you can see that there's a lot going on in this area with CSOs and stormwater issues as well. And there was a lot of money projected for the area. So we laid out and planned out an express storm sewer. It was going to be an express storm sewer, and you can kind of see here is a picture of the viaduct. That you can see kind of the depression and where everything sits. And we were pretty pleased with the solution that we came up with because it took care of CSO control. It provided CSO control. It really addressed those two main regulators. And also there was a flooding at the viaduct. When we wanted to take a look at the SSCS and look at the sewers there, I think it took Jeff Stone's crews a couple days because it was plugged full of debris and sediment to get in there because there's so much flow and everything that sits in that area. So there's some O&M issues associated, and if they're going to be in there cleaning, it's not the most safe environment with traffic flow. The city also, and I wasn't even probably aware of all the discussions, there was a lot of discussions that every time something would hit the viaduct, it would shut the railroad down for an extended period. Which created a lot of safety issues as well. And I know that the city also proceeded with some funding through small city grants to do kind of a joint street project along Clinton. So you can see that we're trying to do a lot here. I mean, we're taking care of a lot of different issues with one project. And the project ended up being a big success. You can see we did a 36-inch express storm sewer. From the viaduct down Clinton Street and being discharged. There was also a piece of storm sewer that was constructed over here to take that off, which addressed the flooding issues and the CSO compliance issues and a lot of the other safety. And you can see that the savings was about $5 million. Okay, so you can see that just by getting in and doing the adaptive management, figuring out the specific problems, when the original program was set out, it's like, okay, we got six regulators that are all active. We need to go through and do broad brush separation. Well, this approach, like I said, I think is at the time the integrated planning documentation wasn't out, but I think it really falls under that very well.
With that 2.4 million. And I've heard recently from city employees that there's actually no flooding at the viaduct anymore. So it sounds like one of the issues has been addressed. And also out at A6, which is up on the northeast side, the city is actually not able to even grab a sample from the overflow anymore because it's not overflowing. I think that's probably due to us getting the storm sewers out of that area. So it seems like the project has been a big success.
Okay, so we talked about the adaptive management and also the integrated solution. When you look at the amount of money that's remaining in the city, with the program affordability, we feel like we still need something else. Okay, it just there's those are two very solid strategies that are going to be a backbone. But we just, we've taken an opportunity to look at a community down in Georgia that they have a CSO program, and there's a lot of different things associated with their program, which is very unique. They were able to get out in front of the Atlanta EPA. I don't know what the correct acronym in Georgia is, but they were able to pilot and get approval of a demonstrative approach on a high rate treatment facility, which saved them a significant amounts of money. I think it was saving them anywhere between 70 to 80% of their total program value. We're not far enough along in our program to be able to evaluate the demonstrative and presumptive approach. The Ohio EPA is doing a TMDL of the Maumee, and we're hoping to have that information this spring to evaluate. But what we did take away from the trip down there was they're looking at joint community benefit projects to coincide with CSOs. Okay, sewer separation, albeit at the end you get a new street. Okay, typically it's 12 months of disruption, of dirt, all kinds of dust and everything like that. And so what you have is raising of sewer rates and construction that's impacting the residents. So CSO programs, particularly in the Midwest, throughout, are not the most popular programs. They're the largest capital investments that are going on right now, and they're improving the water quality, which is a huge benefit. But a lot of communities could use those dollars spent other ways to help the community. So what we're trying to do here is identify some joint CSO and community benefit projects. Okay, so what we're working on is improving the CSO program acceptance by the community by looking at these joint projects. So the first thing we did was look at the city strategic plan initiatives. Okay, there's a lot of initiatives in there, but the ones that really jumped out at us were riverbank beautification and pedestrian access and walkways. We can work with those as far as a CSO context. There's a lot of your CSO facilities, the two examples well, at least the example Tiffany's working on in Kingsbury, all of the CSOs and everything are down near the riverbank. Okay, so what we're looking at is kind of a combination project, and where we think that the construction cost of the improvements can be less, which would allow some community benefit provided. So on the north side of Defiance, we have our, kind of our compliance, items that we need to work with. You have we have 4 CSO overflows. We have a siphon structure. We have a stormwater issue at the railroad crossing. We have a pump station, Northwest Pump Station. And we also have some river water intrusion issues as well in the interceptor. And these look very typical to what we've been talking about in all the areas, but this is how we're trying to look at it and say, okay, what can we do to kind of do an integrated approach project in the area? So we looked at an integrated approach plus the joint benefit. So what we came up with was a river walk, okay, that would have a relief sewer that would be in combination. Because of the river walk location, we would be able to eliminate the pump station, which would reduce the O&M costs associated with that. And we would look at high rate treatment in the park area near the siphon structure. So we would be able to continue conveying our dry weather flows through the siphon structure and be able to then treat our high weather flows. So you can see that this project has a CSO control component. It addresses some stormwater issues, addresses river water intrusion elimination, some O&M issues once again with the pump station. That, on the next picture I'll show you that pump station is kind of through the woods and over the hill there, past the railroad track, so it's not the easiest to get to. And then we also have some riverbank beautification and pedestrian access. Okay, so typical engineering would come in and say, we're going to do an interceptor, a relief sewer, and we're going to run it down the road. Okay, we're going to run it down Clinton Street, and we're going to run it over the siphon structure. Okay, Clinton Street's the main street. Lee Roush City Engineers probably cringing at the thought of Clinton Street being shut down because there'd be many upset residents. Also, I guarantee you when we got under that road, we'd find about 10 inches of concrete that no one would anticipate would be there. So the cost of the pavement restoration would be significant. We would also upgrade the pump station with a new force main and convey it to this location. Then we would have jack and bores underneath the road here, which would probably be about $500 a foot and be very expensive to get across. So that would be your traditional alternative. It provides the sewers in the street, so it's easy for maintenance, but the cost of it, once again, the city has seen through their sewer separation and running in the streets that the costs go up significantly. So the second alternative that we laid out was, okay, how can we work and try to reduce those pavement issues, the maintenance of traffic issues, and eliminate that pump station. I'll tell you what, if you're an engineer and you can eliminate a pump station, an operator is your best friend in the entire world. That's one thing that we always try to do when you're out looking at stuff. So we looked at running the interceptor low along the river, okay, and following topography. These alignments, I think, cut like 6 to 7 feet vertical feet out of it, which, the depth of the sewer is a big cost of construction. And you can see that we took a look at both of these alternatives from a cost standpoint. So the first alternative, which is pretty traditional, is about $1.5 million. You have less interceptor sewer, but the cost of it's higher because it's with compacted granular backfill. You have a lot of restoration cost. You also have maintenance of traffic. That would be a tremendous excavation down there. The alternative 2 is the Riverwalk, okay, concept. And you have more interceptor because we're taking the pump station off, but the unit cost of the interceptor is less because you're in native soils and you have compacted backfill instead of granular material. You also have less pavement restoration and, associated with it, almost, very minimal, if anything. What we do have in here is Riverwalk construction, okay? And there's about $500,000 in there. The cost of these are very similar. They're about $1.5 million. What this shows you is by putting the sewer at a lower elevation and getting out of the pavement and the maintenance of traffic issues, you can free up additional dollars to do a community benefit, okay? A community amenity. Okay, now the city may say we don't want to spend the extra $500, we just want to bury it along the river. Okay, that's something that can be looked at. But what we're trying to illustrate here is that there is a way to provide community benefit, because that will be a very positive thing for the community and help gain acceptance of the program. Okay, now we have some renderings. Okay, I got to tell you, these make me cringe. We have a graphic designer that does all this and it makes it look all pretty and perfect, and engineers usually deal a little bit more in grades and elevations. But you can see that we're looking at some kind of concept, along the river where we would have some kind of path. Now, we'd need access to the interceptor, and so it would be buried along there. One of the key cost-saving components would be to actually go underneath the bridge in this manner and not be in the pavement. Anybody that knows the Clinton Street interchange right there near Sensory, that's a disaster area. The cost of that would be significant. So, and with the elevation, there's quite a bit of elevation coming off. You can almost see from the mounding, there's quite a bit of elevation that would come off. And, we're showing in here, pretty concrete veneers on the bridge to match, these could be sheet piling walls. These are shown as kind of precast panels. The fine details haven't been worked out, but the concept is you have the money to come up with kind of a community amenity. So the Riverwalk would continue along, and here it's more of an asphalt kind of path. The piping would be installed. Once we get under the bridge, we're going to be a little deeper, okay? Because the bridge is kind of the low point. We're going to be a little deeper, and we have here, which is our high-rate treatment facility. You can see there's some buried tankage under the ground. We got some facility above grade for equipment and other things that would need to be maintained. Okay, but we also have a river walk. An outlook to the river. So you have benches and different stuff, a community amenity that'd be set. So once again, kind of going through stuff and just trying to lay out some alternatives. I know that
seeing the stuff from afar is probably not the easiest to look at some of the figures we had, but what we're wanting to do is, get into the long-term control plan update, and like the mayor said, look at some out-of-the-box thinking, because the cost is such a huge factor, and we're looking at the adaptive management strategy, the integrated planning approach, joint CSO riverbank beautification, proactive coordination with the EPA. Okay, I mean, these concepts, are, as we develop the long-term control plan, we're going to be meeting with them to walk them through our ideas. The last thing you want to do is prepare a long-term control plan, submit it to the agency. It's just, these documents are very evolving, and to jump from point A to point B, it takes a while for them to catch up to the process. The other thing is the iterative decision-making process. You got to be, engineering-wise, you got to be nimble and on your feet and adjust to whatever conditions you run into. So we have here's the contact information for the city and us, and if anybody wants a copy of the presentation, we can provide it. Last night I was trying to get we have a flyover of that rendering that we want to show. It was like 11 o'clock last night. My 13-year-old IT kid in the making was asleep, so I couldn't have him help me. I couldn't figure out how to embed this video in my PowerPoint, so you'll have to bear with me on the old school, but you can kind of get a feel for, and I know there's going to be some permitting people in the floodplain that are cringing when they see this document, okay? But it's for a conceptual for people to understand that the kind of out-of-box thinking that is being looked at when you look at these different components. We're gonna try to get a picture of the mayor riding his bike down there, but we weren't able to quite to get that. But you can see that the concept would be to fit it in the area, and we'd obviously have to work on some odor control strategies if we're going to have people on top, viewing the river. So. Okay, thanks. Once again, I'm very excited to have the opportunity to present today. And if you guys have any questions, Tiffany and I will be here the rest of the day. And like I said, we can make the PowerPoints available and emails if anybody wants an email or any questions. So.
Did you want to ask out loud? All right, thank you guys.
I think what you just saw was a lot of Defiance, Ohio, and a lot of what we're doing, and a lot of history of where we've been and how we've got to where we are now. It all costs money. We're $28 million into this. We have 58 to spend according to the 2%. And what can we get for what we're going to spend? We look at this as a river walk for our area, and it's exciting. It would be probably the biggest physical change that our city's ever seen. It ties in with all the Live Smart attitudes, all the programs that you can think of tie into this type of a thing. So we're really excited about it here. And I think the main reason, I think, for inviting everybody here is to where we'd invite you to also think outside the box. There are a lot of engineering firms here today that have ideas, good ideas, like our engineering firm here that we've hired has. Kind of adopt them to your community. What would work where we are? And I think the importance of EPA being here is that we can sit together and look. As we saw this system, and the water underneath, it's in the big tubes underneath, when it goes back into the river, it's clear water. That water from our storm system is going to enter into the muddy river, and hopefully our water with that water will help clear it up. And if each of us along the way were able to do something like that, have a system in place that we're able to help ourselves like that, we'd be able to, I think, contribute a lot to the cleaning up of the rivers. Like I say again, what you saw is what we're doing. Our next presentation will be more about what the mayor's councils are doing and taking a look at the way that all of us, it actually summarizes for us all a plan that we can use too. So I would suggest that we take a quick break here, and we'll have the next presentation set up. And so if you want to get some more coffee or use the restroom or something, we'll use this as an opportunity for a break. Gary? Jenny, do you want a picture before we start? No. Okay. The title again. Director of Utilities. God, you're right. One of the things I'm doing, mine.
Just keep it all on.
Yeah. Well, welcome back. We're going into our second phase of our program here, and this is Gary Seeley, and he's from the City of Lima, and he's going to be presenting the plan that they've adopted and put their time and efforts into, and it's something that the Mayoral Association has looked at, and it's really a very another good way of looking at everything we're looking at. So, Gary, with that, Gary, would you want to do yours?
Again, name's Gary Sheely, the City Utilities Director for the City of Lima. I've been with the city for about 35 years, been director for, the last 25, so long tenure with the city and in these issues. Our plan is the long-term control plan update. It is a presentation that was provided to US EPA back in October of last year. We have had some revisions to it based upon our continuing negotiations with both Ohio EPA as well as US EPA. Our overview, I'll say, talk about is economic challenges, the integrated planning process, and then next steps. I will say just briefly where we are with the agency at this point in time. We believe that our technical issues are pretty well resolved. There may be some discussions we're going to be having with US EPA as well as Ohio EPA on the kind of the final details. And where we're literally at this point in time, in all reality, is the consent decree that will be negotiating to implement the programs that I'll go through here today, or under the integrated plan framework. It is very important because as we go through here, Lima, as most other communities, are going to have those individual issues that each community faces that may be slightly different from other ones. And this integrated plan is, we feel, is very suited, well suited to basically help us address those issues. But to start out with, under the economic challenges, just very briefly, won't spend a lot of time, but Lima is a population of just under 40,000 people. We, as a lot of the cities and communities in Ohio and the Midwest, we've seen a decline of population. We were probably 25 years ago close to 60,000 people. Our Allen County, of which we sat in, though, it has not lost a population. We're losing population out of the core city out to the suburban areas, and I'll kind of reflect on that. But we do service some of that suburban area through contracts that we have with the county commissioners that represent those areas. Our service population's about 48,000. Our city MHI, the median household income per the census, is just under 27,000. Of which we have a lot of very low income designations inside the city. What we're finding is that Lima truly is it's an urban environment. The metropolitan area around Lima is right around 80,000 people. But we're concentrating the poorer people inside the city. You know, the new suburbs are where everybody wants to live, and so the impacted housing tends to be more in the city, and we see that migration. 34% of our residents are at or right around poverty level. And when you look at the unemployment, and I will quantify this, this also includes your 16-year-olds and older, which basically are in the job market. We are at around 20%. The economic challenges we have, basically you can see the household median income. It has been reducing over the years. I don't know whether you can see this little button that's up there. There it is. But basically you can see we were up around 38, we're down now to 26. And it's just, as the census occur, it is just this dynamics that's occurring in our community. We've also seen in our sewer fund some reduction in our billable sewage. This is basically from our heavily impacted by some of our industrial customers. Seems like every time that you increase a water rate or a sewer rate, your industries will find ways and people will find ways to conserve, which is great on one hand because it gives us more, retention of our resources. But at the same point in time, when you start trying to do a projection of how you're going to meet all these demands, it is a concerning area, which I'll talk about in a little bit, but just to kind of lay the framework that we're talking about here. The funding proposal to meet these challenges, rates must remain affordable. I think Bob and Mike and so forth went through that set of discussion. Similar type of issues we have. We've got poor people, but we also have upper incomes too. But when you look at your community, you have to ensure that the whole rate base basically can afford these areas. Minimize adverse impact on low income, fixed incomes. I'm sure that if you've been in front of, as I do, in front of rate adjustment, rate hearings, you will hear from your senior citizens. You'll hear from the at-risk populations, and it's very concerning. How do we assure them that they're going to be able to live in our community if, in fact, we have to continue to increase these rates without really having a sustainable, basically, process? As Tanka side indicated, we have to ensure that we have sustainable systems in our area and prevent from losing our outside customer base to the county. As I kind of mentioned, the county has 3 treatment plants and a service territory that is outside Lima. We have service agreements for 2 or 3 major areas that are outside, but they have the capacity to terminate those service agreements. The county is on, just briefly, the county uses a fixed base sewer bill. Right now their average, or their sewer bill for the residential customer is $45 a month. And if we greatly exceed that cost to that outside rate base, then what's going to happen is the county has already done feasibility studies to basically build pump stations and pump that flow out of our system into theirs because they can. So that's one of the local issues that needs to be recognized in local communities. And then we also want to retain our industrial base and make sure that we can, in fact, encourage business and not discourage. Some of the areas that we looked at that was customer MHI, customer usage, and then projections of our rates based upon basically the last 10 years. And what we have here, I'll walk over here and use this. I think it's on now. This is a compilation of rate impacts on this process. It's all based upon growth from our MHI or loss, and also basically, are we going to have, what's going to happen to inflation? As we project our program, it's going to be over 28 years. And we are concerned. If you look, this is 2% of median household income. Now, I will also identify that this number represents the actual cost to the resident. In other words, 2% of their median household income, that $28,000, 2% of it basically equates to about a $50 a month sewer bill. But if we look at, in the other area basically is our growth and then inflation. If we go into an inflationary spiral because of the economy and that cost goes up, that starts upsetting the apple cart on what we can afford. This projection here, there's only two scenarios that keeps us underneath the 2% of median household income. And this line here basically states that is peak growth over the last 10 years, where if we had growth in our system that we know that we can sustain before the economic slide occurred that has impacted all of us, and then looking at the average inflation so we don't get up there. If we can basically meet that set of terms, then we can, in fact, afford to do the program I'm going to be talking about here in a minute. And then, of course, the other one is if we have peak growth with minimum inflation. But any of these other scenarios start shoving this cost well above that 2% actual cost to our residents and gets up here where it really is not sustainable. Same point in time, as I said, our program for payback basically is a 28-year period, a scheduled program that basically allows us to build that out. We have implementation up to this point where we're building it, but unfortunately or fortunately, we've got another 30 years or more out here where we're going to be paying off the debt service, the debt structures, to do this work. And if, in fact, we don't see the sustaining average growth with, or peak growth with average inflation, if we have any of these other scenarios, then in the payback period, the thing goes out of sight. So part of our concern is basically how do we deal with these potentially changing economic conditions? We feel the integrated plan is the avenue basically to be able to address these issues. Because as they occur, as I'll point out, you have an opportunity to go back and look at adaptive engineering. Go back into your consent decree with a reopener. Explain this to the agency so they understand what takes place. And it may mean if we don't see the growth back in here, we may have to make some adjustments because we're not seeing the growth to meet this curve that makes this sustainable. I need a drink. And again, on the kind of the schedule, the way on the implementation schedule, what we're talking about, is we have, we'll be breaking this thing out on various phases. Our early phase is what we call the interceptor and upstream areas, wastewater treatment plant, I'll go through that. And then we deal with our CSOs, and then we deal with our sanitary sewer overflow basins. And then we have some early start stuff that's in here, but this is the construction curve as what we need to see basically take place to be able to afford all this. I will, just as a brief history, I won't go completely through this, but we started in 1998 or 1998 with the original submittal to Ohio EPA. I heard a comment today, I think, and I guess I'll characterize it. We developed a plan and submitted it to Ohio EPA, and Ohio EPA approved it, reviewed it, and they approved it basically in 2000. We started out in the process and started working, and then we had we actually spent about $10 million. We put in some fine screens for the floatables and collectibles in our system. And US EPA came in 2005 and did a 9 minimum control audit. And as they got involved in what we were doing and what was in the plan, they basically brought us to Chicago and said we need to negotiate with US EPA because they really weren't satisfied where we were at and how Ohio basically had approached this. So since that point in time, we have been negotiating. Early on, it was principally just with with the US EPA, but more recently, we are fully engaged with both Ohio EPA and US EPA. We've been very, very much our long-term control plan, as I point out, I will say the early tenets of it match the integrated plan type process that the agency has defined as the guiding principles in the integrated plan. And we were one of the first in the country to submit a request to Region 5 for an integrated plan, and we've been basically building that structure up until now. We went through the draft processes, and I will say it was very important. US EPA came to Lima basically I think it was in June of 2012, last year. And I think it was very informative. I think a lot of times when you go over the telephone, you go through emails and stuff like that, you miscommunicate. The communication doesn't go right the way it should. And this process of coming to the community has worked very, very well, I think, for understanding. We have the benefit with Ohio EPA because, as you know, that when you operate treatment plants, every year Ohio EPA is at our doorstep. They're always there, basically looking. Tom Boffenbarger, I think I could recognize him anywhere, from that standpoint. But I think it's good to have that personal face-to-face contact to really clarify issues. Just to give you an idea, most of you probably locally understand this, but this is the Ottawa River Basin. It starts over here near Ada, flows up through Lima, then goes up near Kalida, up at this area here. It joins the Auglaize, and then just a short distance up here basically comes into Defiance, into the Maumee. I think this is important. This is a 1976 assessment by Ohio EPA that only about 25% of the Ottawa River was in full warm water habitat criteria. The main stem is classified as a warm water habitat throughout. There are points in the secondary areas that are modified because of agricultural issues and some of these issues. But a couple areas, basically, as you can see, were basically in the partial, but a major area here was basically fully in non-compliant. It was, it was receipt of our sanitary sewer overflows, our combined sewer overflows, and also some non-sewered areas. In the year 2010, as part of the TMDL, and there will be probably sometime this spring, the TMDL, total maximum daily load allocation work will be done probably, I think, by June, I've heard. But what has happened is that with improvements that were done over that 10-year period, basically 75% of the river now meets the full warm water habitat. And I identify, at least in my mind, what is really causing that. Two things. About right in this area here, there was a major non-sewered area that had a whole bunch of community housing that was out on septic tanks. And we knew from the water monitoring that there was all kinds of fecal loading was getting into the stream. That's all been sewered now. It all comes in and receives full treatment. And I'll be frank with you, we put in those fine screens that are on our 5 major CSOs. And those are not primary treatment, but they get very, very close. We actually get a lot of biological removal just by the screening process, keeping it in the sewer system, it gets out there. And I think that is the reason why we've seen the major improvements. We have an area of concern that is in the this little corner right here. It's about a 1.5 mile stretch. It's downstream of our discharge, the Lima refinery, and the PCS nitrogen plant. That is the only area now in the Ottawa River Basin that directly in the main stem that is in total non-compliance, in which we are going to be working on there. The proposed integrated plan, early action items, the wastewater treatment plant, CSO, SSO, stormwater, and asset management. When we first started in this process back in the year 2000, we included stormwater. Lima basically was headed for the early MS4 communities, and we started basically looking at stormwater. We are an MS4 city now. We have literally created a stormwater utility, and we use impervious calculations to ensure that that stormwater discharge has resources basically to address, at least at the level we have today, some of the challenges. As well as we did an asset management study. I believed early on that if we allowed the available disposal income of our rate base basically to go wholly and solely to the mandates and did not fully address the rebuilding of a 100-year-old sewer system, then what we would find is it would crumble around us as we basically, met the higher level demands. We have the proposed integrated plan from our standpoint as we filed with the agencies. It integrates the wastewater treatment plant, maximizes flows, CSOs, SSOs, as well as deals with, again, with the various components here. The plan itself has early action programs. These were as driven as much by our NPDES was delayed implementation for about 2 years through Ohio EPA, and that was a function of understanding what our long-term control plan was going to be, because we were negotiating with US EPA out of Chicago, yet Ohio EPA basically was looking at our permit basically to move ahead with these things. So we have entered into a new NPDES permit, and within that NPDES permit are early actions items that are congruent with the desires of ourselves and Ohio EPA, but can meet the test or be included and will be included in our long-term control plan in the consent decree. We'll increase the wastewater treatment plant flows first, maximize flows there. We'll implement CSO control to receive just under a 98% capture, which is very, very high. But we believe that we can do this within the funding vehicle that I just kind of went through and explained. And then we'll address finally our SSO abatements. There are these 3 major ones, and this was in negotiations with the agency, looking at your SSOs. We know from doing our analysis that the combined sewer overflow discharges are 400 times more effective on the environment than what our SSOs are. The SSOs actually discharge into tributary streams to Lima that gets into the main stem many, many miles downstream. And those streams themselves are fully warm water habitat compliant. But what you have to worry about with your SSOs is the human health criteria. Are we exposing basically the potential for some kids and residents basically to get into the discharge of an SSO and then pick up a pathogenic disease? So what we've done is, in our negotiations, we've agreed to these 3 main priority SSO basins that have more potential of direct contact with residents, to put those on a 25-year design with the balance of them. I think there's 5 more of them that are at a 5-year design. And then we have a renewal and replacement program. It is the asset management along with the stormwater, and then again sequence for the greatest environmental benefit. This is the proposed plan. Totals just under $150 million over 28 years. 87 million will be spent in the first 12. And for the plan itself, using the US EPA guidance, we are at 2.58%. We're higher than the 2% that the CSO rules actually will mandate you to. But we feel this is the best for the community. It does the best work, but we're also, again, using our barometer as what we charge our residents. That is 2%. And again, what we have is that this is the cost curve over that 28 years. And early on, we do work at the wastewater treatment plant. Then we do the CSO basin. And then we slide into a period where we do the SSOs. And then this curve here is our asset management. We basically are going to be scheduling over the implementation time basically to rebuild over 28 to 50 years. We'll rebuild our sewer system as we know it today. And then the bottom line is the stormwater. Right now we have, on an annual basis, or well, on a monthly basis, it's, what is it? I think it's $5, and I think it's about $5.05 or something like that per month. The residents basically pays for the stormwater, the operations of the stormwater utility. In addition to that, every impervious house or every, the residents pay, well, that's impervious charge, and then industry or large churches and so forth has the impervious service calculation that basically they pay, for that on an annual basis. I will say that, I guess as I move forward here, using the EPA formula, we are a high burden, and what we have to basically consider is, again, as I mentioned before, if we lose our outside rate base, we lose 25% of that base, 40% of the revenue, and we'll drop another $2,800 off the MHI. So it's very, very important for us to remain competitive in our rate structure with the county. And I'll go through that in a few minutes. The early action programs, basically, again, these items here are actually in our NPDES permit as an early action. We have completed a major rebuild of our College Street sewer. It was about 1,500 feet of 78-inch sewer that was in serious part of collapsing. An interesting note of this was a sewer that was impacted in the early 70s by us putting in a real-time control system. And what we found is that we actually have gates that are in this sewer that when it starts raining, those gates shut up and they will close, and they will store flow back this sewer for probably about a 7 or 8 block area. But that inundation and somewhat surcharging and pressuring is what started causing that sewer to start collapsing. So we're reviewing all of our other sewers that basically is involved in this real-time control process to ensure that we catch those before they become a problem. We are looking at a time-critical lift station work. If you recall, our sanitary sewer overflow areas will not be addressed we'll start addressing those about 16 to 18 years down the line, and we need to ensure that those lift stations, repairs and replacements of those lift stations occur so we get that long duration of time before we do that full work out there. The Baxter Street lining project is an early start. It is one of the main interceptors. It basically goes from one of our primary lift stations that dewaters our main interceptor that takes that flows out to the wastewater treatment plant. And then we're also starting the Headworks project for the primary clarification improvements. And one of our issues, that was a system that basically some of those processes were in the early 50s. But we really couldn't move ahead with that repair work till we understood what our long-term control plan was going to present to us, because we didn't want to build something at 53 MGD capacity and then all of a sudden realize that we had to maximize flows to the treatment plant at a higher capacity than we were wasting money. So us getting these things done now is allowing us to really move ahead with our process. The result basically is that we got $25 million within the 66 months of these processes. The Headworks will be designed for 70 million gallons per day. We are going to maximize flows to the treatment plant. We'll increase the flows, again, to help us continue to dewater and take pressure off our CSOs, get at the plant where we can provide a higher level of treatment. The wastewater treatment plant, need another drink. Your ears probably need a break anyway. I will point out is too, like before I get into the kind of the technical areas, we have retained 3 engineering firms to basically help us do this work. You heard Mike Fromer from URS and Tiffany. URS basically is doing our sanitary sewer overflow work. They're doing the work in those basins, helping put together the plan I'll go through. Jones and Henry, engineers out of Toledo, is doing our wastewater treatment plant work, along with some of the work that's done up at our Baxter Street lift station. And then Montgomery, Watson, Harza we are utilizing those for our combined sewer overflow area, and basically the retention basin I'll discuss. When we first went into this, it's like, well, why didn't we just go choose one firm? And I'll be frank with you, I knew that our plans were going to come under scrutiny. Any point in time that you go to the agency, whether it's Ohio EPA or US EPA, there's another engineer, there's another consulting engineer that's going to basically be looking at those plans. And we were also looking for specialized, specific expertise in the areas. We felt when we went into it that Montgomery Watson had a stronger, I'll say, scientific base for evaluation of our river, to characterize the river, understanding that, than what maybe some of the other. Now, Mike might sit here and want to argue with me at this point in time, but also we went for our SSOs. We put that out for bid and interviewed a number of consultants, and we felt that URS could bring the best process for what we were using. And then Jones and Henry has been a long-time engineer, a firm that we've used in our wastewater treatment plant. They have real knowledge of the plant and all the background behind everything. But the key, not just to have those, but the key issue in my mind was the peer review, because I've charged all 3 of those engineers, and we pay their bill. They send us a bill to be involved in these conversations. But I have, Mike will comment on MWH. He'll comment on Tom Unger's work, and Steve Worlman will comment on all theirs, and they'll comment back and forth. And in my mind, it has really helped us be able to negotiate changes in concepts with the agency, because we're not just locked into somebody's thought and one thought. We use a peer review process. We're probably paying a premium for that, but we believe, and I believe, it's the best interest of the community. It's the best interest for us to basically be able to have, frank discussions with the agencies as different items comes from their engineers that are reviewing. I mean, I think Tinker will tell you, they use a contracted engineer. They have internal, but they use a contracted engineer to actually pour all of our plans. And I think this process allowed us to basically open our minds up to various different concepts, as well as to effectively be able to argue that we've peer-reviewed this already. We believe these are the best alternatives. And we went through many, many alternatives to get to the plan that we're talking about here. In the wastewater treatment plant, where we're maximizing flows, again, we're going to be taking it from the 53 MGD down to 70 MGD, million gallons. The plant itself at 40 million gallons per day, the design capacity is here, but we actually operate the plant at about 40 million gallons a day with advanced treatment. And in that advanced treatment, these 2 tanks right here are nitrification towers. They're basically, up to this point in time, they've been packed with nitrifying bacteria. Basically, when we take everything through secondary, we bring it up here, and that's where we basically go after the ammonia. We get our advanced treatment right here. But there's only a few times a year, in all reality, that we use these tanks effectively. It has to really, get the higher flows. Our average day is what, Russ, around about 12 to 15 million gallons a day, and then we get these higher flows. So most of the times, these tanks, they got flow going up there, but the bugs are doing very little, because plus, in the last runs of these activated sludge tanks, we're actually getting into nitrogenous respiration, so we're cleaning some of that ammonia up before we even get there. So one of the innovative technology and adaptive management processes we looked at is to say, let's basically take part of our effluent coming out of primary and put up here just a small amount to grow a biological mass up here that can do secondary treatment. And this is where we've been negotiating with the agency, and we've been negotiating with both Ohio EPA and US EPA on that understanding. And again, it's adaptive engineering. It's a new way to think. The original concept was, well, just go put in high-rate treatment, tons a day or some of those areas like that, which for us would have been another $10 million added onto this process. And what we believe that we effectively are going to be able to do is take our flows above the 40 MGD and basically take them through these towers. So everything that comes, the whole 70 million gallons that comes into this plant is going to basically receive secondary treatment. And when you look at that, that is a very, very high standard. Using high rate flow treatment, you're not going to get secondary treatment. Now there's some new biological processes that are bordering on that out there, but we believe, again, this is adaptive management. It's offering a new concept, and particularly under the integrated plan, we're saying this is where we can save real dollars. Now, at the end of the day, if these things don't quite prove the way we're at, we're agreeing to say, hey, we'll put in a microfilter, or we'll do something behind that if we don't see the full treatment of this process fully be compliant. And then again, we're basically rebuilding the front end of the plant to basically go from 53 to the full 70. And again, all flow receives biological treatment, and then the peak weather basically flows will meet equivalent to secondary treatment. And I will just, at the higher rate, if you're a CSO city, in the Clean Water Act, in the CSO rules, there is a consideration if you're doing high rate treatment or you're doing peak treatment that you can get some consideration. And again, this, in my mind, is part of the strength of this integrated plan. Because what we as operators of the systems are basically saying is, agency, there are means within the Clean Water Act that allows you to give us some consideration. And this is one of the areas we're saying, give us this consideration. It is really meaningful to the rate base and gives us a higher level and a better treatment than possibly going down some other conventional process. The CSO review, we will be building a new 13 million gallon per day CSO storage tank. It will require a relatively large pump station to dewater that tank. And then also we will modify our real-time control to equalize flows to the plant. We will have a small sewer separation that will eliminate 10 of our CSOs. And as part of this, we'll also, when we do that separation, we're working with our stormwater utility to say, we just don't want to put in a new storm sewer. We will basically look at doing some, stormwater treatment, looking at some infiltration areas or some means to basically improve the quality of that area and not just take the stormwater flow out of the combined system, put into a sanitary system or to a stormwater system so it's transported to the stream. We'll be working with them in developing those types of concepts. And then the other one is we will have the dry weather flow. This area here, basically adjustments at a couple lift stations that gets us to the higher level of capture that we needed to be. So this is kind of the results that we're at. We're basically at a 5 CSO overflow per year. And then they range from 5 down to the only CSOs that we'll have when we're done. Right now we have, what is it, Russ, about 19, I think, something like that. And we will eliminate the 19 down to 5 points. So not only are we reducing the time, and now the average overflow of these structures is probably anywhere between 30 and 40 times a year. So it'll go from that point down to 5. 97% capture. And then again, every one of the screens, and this is a picture of one of the screens, basically they have the fine screenings inside of a horizontal screen in there that basically does an excellent job on making sure that we're not putting floatables out in the system. And then the screens themselves are what, I think they're 3 millimeters apart, so it really keeps a lot of stuff in there. I think Tom was one of the ones from Ohio EPA that reviewed our application. We actually got agreement with Ohio EPA that we're done doing anti-degradation reviews. The efficiency of these screens remove so much BOD loading out of the stream that we've got enough credits that we can go clear up to the tertiary capacity of the plant, which is 18.5 MGD. So, that's how efficient these screens are at this point in time. Just as a point, this is where the screen will be located. It's a lower end of our interceptor. Back in the 70s, we put in an interceptor that started about 3 miles upstream of this. Down at the low end, it's 118 inches in diameter. And then these are the river gates that the previous picture had a structure of. The interceptor comes this way, and basically this is the overflow point. And actually that basin is going to set about right here and associated with it. We had a challenge here because we were in quite a discussion and quite a debate, and Teek will tell you, with US EPA. Because when we first looked at this site, we did not have the full geotechnical work done. These little hatcher marks along the way right here are the result of geotechnical evaluations drilling down to bedrock. This site here on the east end is a old industrial commercial landfill. And when we first did the projections on this tank, we basically felt that if we had to if we were in this area, or if this area went clear over here, then we would have some pilings or something over 100 feet deep getting down to where we could stabilize that basin and keep it in place. But we were fortunate, as we recently done this geotechnical work, we found out that we could put the basin here, and the bedrock here is only about anywhere from 7 to 12 feet deep. So actually, reality right now, our extra expense is going to be we're going to have to basically tear bedrock out to put the basin in. But it's good news because it's going to give us a very, very sound foundation to construct that. And I guess I will say, when we didn't know that, we had differences in what the cost of the structure was going to be. We originally were proposing a 13 or a 9 overflow per year versus the 5. We got in discussion with the agency. Their engineer said, well, you should be able to build a basin that at 13 MGD that would give us the 5 overflow. And I'll be frank, we went back and forth. We said, well, we'll commit to build the basin. We'll commit to spend $40 million. And if you guys are right, then we'll get 13. We'll get a 5 overflow. If we're right, then we'll have 13 overflows. But what ended up happening is that we went out and spent about another $150,000, I think, whatever it was, and did the full geotechnical work to define that. And I will say, in dealing with our own internal engineers, there's a concept here that says, how much information do you need to know before you can give a very, very sound engineering estimate? We were kind of working on the assumption that, early on, these are like class 2, maybe class 1, class 2 engineering evaluations. You don't know everything, but you know enough to basically make a judgment on what that cost is. In hindsight, I'll be quite frank with you, I wish I would have ordered MWH 5 years ago to go spend $150 million or $150,000 to do that level of geotechnical work to satisfy that knowledge. We knew it was an old landfill. What are the conditions we're dealing with? But that is kind of outside the norm, where normally you get your engineering evaluation. That's like a class 3 or class 4 evaluation. That's almost you're right at the point where you're ready to construct something. But we needed to know that information a lot earlier than what we got it. At the end of the day, this is where we're at. As I kind of mentioned before, I think from a technical standpoint, I think we're there, very, very close with an agreement with US EPA and Ohio EPA. The SSO review, these are the areas that we basically can lose. Particularly this area here is east of the City of Lima, is where the county could basically take this rate base and move it. So what we are looking to do basically is to make sure our rate structures and our projects basically are congruent with that process. That don't happen. what we did when we did the initial evaluations, we looked at, these are separated areas. So the wisdom basically says it's separated, so the stormwater needs to be in the stormwater sewer system and the sanitary needs to be in the sanitary. Well, why isn't it? We did a full sanitary sewer system evaluation, and we found all the low-hanging fruit in all these areas and went out and done correctives. We found where somehow a stormwater pipe and a catch basin leak got shoved into the sanitary sewer. Well, we went out through the work that URS did for us. We found that we got all that corrected. We went out and we did, downspout tests and all that stuff, and we got probably, I think this is since my tenure with the city. I think we've done that 3 times now, and so we probably got 99.9% of the downspouts off of the system. Now there may be somebody that has a trap that it doesn't allow the smoke to come out of the the downspout at the top, stuff like that. That you find that out. But what we did find is that particularly in this area here, and this early area right in here, that these were basically right after World War II. This is when we went from combined sewers to separated. And unfortunately for us, it's a local condition that what we found out is that this area originally was outside the city limits. We as a utility operated our wastewater treatment plant. The sewer system was a function of the street department. And what you had is that the street department guys, to be quite frank with you, they didn't want to go outside the city limits. So there was a no man's land out here. And what we believe happened is that when the guy built a house right here, he went 2 blocks away and built a house right there. And the permitting from the health department, all that kind of stuff really wasn't in place as it is today. And so what they did, they went out here and they put a common lateral underneath the basement floor. What happens when you put a common lateral under the basement floor, as they do up here in the combined system? Any ideas? You put a common lateral down there, the footer drain gets tied to that common lateral. The downspouts got shoved in that common lateral. Now when we got out here further, we got out here to the newer housing, all that's been straightened out, and our health department, ourselves, the county, everybody, we know that you have a sump pump put in the basement. The sump pump deals with your footer, and your downspouts basically go out in the yard. But here, what we faced is, in the studies we done, and we did, I think, what was it, Mike? I think it was about 600 households. I think we went in and physically did a thing. What we found out is that common lateral. And when we brought that back as to how do you correct that, that requires that resident literally to dig up their foundation, dig up their footer, dig up their lateral, and basically correct that. And I'll be frank with you, our legislative body said no. They didn't just say no, they said hell no. You got residents that lived in that house for 20, 30 years. This problem here had caused us over time a lot of flooded basements. Because when the storm system filled up, well, I'll just give you a bit of history. This area wasn't in the city until I think it was in the early 60s. In the early 60s, these residents who were having these flooded basements said, we'll annex the city if you solve our basement flooding. And the city engineer at that point in time says, okay, after all the pressure comes down from council and the mayors and stuff like that. So how he solved that, he went out into this area where there is it's not a full, complete stormwater system. It was pretty much built like you build your road drains. There's no curb and gutter there. So what you have is you have a stormwater system that for 2 blocks up the street, there's little road drains that comes down the road, little road tiles that basically comes down and discharges into the catch basin. But over time, all that gets filled in. So now it's real weak. But what the city did at that point in time to solve that, they went to the interconnections of the manholes on the street. Here's a sanitary manhole, here's a stormwater manhole. And what they did, they put an interconnect between those 2 manholes. They put it up high enough that basically, by the way that I think we're aware that storm systems work when it first starts raining, it's going to discharge. The storm sewer is going to basically take that peak flow and transport it out. Then pretty much it starts dropping back down. And it takes a while for the sanitary to come up because all that water has to percolate down the ground, get up to where it gets to the footer drain, then starts moving out. So that worked for a lot of the storms, for the smaller and mid-sized storms. But of course, then when the heavy storm came up and stayed raining, then next thing you know, we would get in this area particularly, we had close to 200 houses. At some point in time, we get a flooded basement. Now what we did 10 years, or about probably 9 years ago, we adopted a water and basement program. And what we do, if we have that case out here, we will, as a city, we will go out and we will dig up the foundation. We'll relocate the sanitary lateral. We'll bring it in 5 feet above the basement floor. And then the resident, just so they understand that they had an illegal connection to our system, we ask them to pay for the coring of the basement floor, capture where the footer drain is, they put their sump pump in, and they pump it out. So we don't get hit with, well, this is all your problem, so you got to pay it, when in fact it was a construction flaw that happened way back when. But our elected body on doing total separation and doing that type of work says no. We're not going to basically impose all that requirement on every one of those. And for us, that would have been probably close to 5,000 households. Just the uproar that would have occurred when you only got a couple hundred people that basically has any real contact with flooded basements and understand this, when the other 4,500 of them are happy and dry, and you come beating on their door and say, you got to go do this. And I mean, I got a couple assistants that worked for me, and they were even walking into those people and saying, we got a better means for you to basically handle your downspout. For $20 you can run it out in the yard and it does all these benefits. They were ordered off their property. So it's education, as part of it. But in any event, we are doing what we call a store pump and treat, and that's why we talked about the 25-year storm, the 5-year storm. And these areas, and this is one of them, Allentown's the other one, and the other one is, I have to think about, Cole, I think it is. It's these areas principally right in here is where we will capture the flow volume of a 25-year storm. And then we will basically, I guess I'll move the slide here. In these areas, we are going to be capturing this much volume. And Tika will tell you is that the EPA really doesn't recognize it as a design storm per se. It's that volume of flow. It's the reduction you get from that. So what we're going to be doing when we're done, we'll be capturing just under 10 million gallons and capture what was basically an SSO, and that will get full treatment at the plant. And and that basically is a cost of $30 million. I'll tell you, I about fell off here the other day. I kind of lost track of it, but I went back into our original plan that Ohio EPA had approved, and we had design concepts. That number was $5 million. Now we're at $30 million. But it's the higher level of environmental control that I think we're all looking for, what it's going to take basically to meet the environment and protect the residents. So here it is, our program. Basically, it's 147 million. The large basin, upstream separation, real-time control. We're going to even enhance. Right now, we can capture 33/100ths of an inch of rain, 1/3 of an inch, when it rains, basically in a 4-hour storm, and not put a drop of that in the river. It all goes to the wastewater treatment plant. We use flow equalization, flow storage. We bring it there to provide that level of treatment. And of course, that goes up to the higher number. The wastewater treatment plant is $29 million. The asset management basically is $1.3 million a year as an average, which we'll spend over that 28-year period over $30 million. And then we have forecasts to go clear out to 50 years that will continue that pace. And then the stormwater is $600,000 a year. $16 million will be spent. I will tell you, we expect a lot of pressure if you're not aware of it, but probably US EPA out of headquarters sometime, I think I've heard sometime this summer, the new revised stormwater regulations are really coming out, and if you followed any of the discussions that are happening on that, these stormwater regulations I think could be very, very significant for communities. Another real reason for the integrated plan. For us, when we put that on our platter and we basically commit to do that through this consent decree, and we're at a balance of $50 a month on our sewer bills, and all of a sudden here comes another $10 million here, another $10 million there. How are we going to manage that? Is this just going to be a pile-on? And I think the integrated plan gives us that capacity to basically say and work with the agency and say, now let's define what has the highest priority. The ball game has changed. I mean, this environmental process is not static, as all of us know. I mean, I'll be frank with you, we started, when I started in this industry, we were measuring in parts per million, milligrams per liter. Where are we now? We're in, parts per billion. I think we're even going above that. And every time that gets out there, some scientist is going to find something that says there's an impact because of that parcel out there. Some doctor is going to find, some research is going to find that, and that's going to come back as in all reality, probably as a mandate. And so for us, basically having the integrated plan is the way that I think that we can discuss the agency what is the most important thing that we need to be investing. And over time, then you use the adaptive management and processes like that to make this thing to work. So here's our integrated plan. The SSOs, I kind of mentioned some of this, is substantially higher than the SSOs for the volumes. We do not have any chronic dry weather overflows. We do have some SSOs that happen, and some grease gets out into the sewer system and plugs it up, but we do not have any type of chronic flows there. We're looking at the SSO and more of a direct human contact, which I talked about that, and then our CSOs, Ottawa River is a warm water habitat. All the other ones are already at warm water, and then the preliminary analysis shows we don't have any anecdotal evidence that says that people are getting sick from our SSOs. Working with the health department, looking at those type of records. Not saying it doesn't happen, there's just no evidence that basically says that somebody's assigned that. And then this is what we're doing with our rate structure. We are moving to a flat rate structure of $50 a month. Right now, just real briefly, you probably can't read that, but our minimum user on the inside of the City of Lima is 300 cubic feet. From 0 to 300 cubic feet, they pay. The 1,000 cubic foot inside right now is $38. Will go to $29. They actually come back down a little bit because there are 28 years of rate adjustments that occur once we get this first curve. Once this is done, it basically flattens everything. It goes to a flat rate, and then for the inside, then builds up on a rate so we reach that point. Now the outside customer, the 300 cubic foot guy basically was $26 a month last year. Now he's going to be at $45.23. We're pretty much going to match where the county is right now. I mean, being frank with you, from our standpoint, we're taking away the leverage point that resident out in our outside base can run to the county commissioners and go, I want in your system. Well, what's your system? Your system's $45. That same guy, though, out here at 1,000 cubic foot, basically, right now is at $70, and we just brought him back to the $50. If we didn't change the rate structure we have right now, all these rates, this guy here outside would have been up around $150, $160. And then the inside high rate people would go up. And what we're doing with the flat rate is probably twofold. We're making ourselves competitive with the county. The same point in time is when you use a volume-based system, you're going to have basically poor people. You're going to have people at the poverty level that got 4 or 5 kids. And by the time that they use that consumption and you stay on a volume system, you're going to drive their percentage of median household income up to 7, 8, 9, 10%. You're going to, as you meet these mandates, you're going to push those to the point where they can't afford to be in your system. We're seeing our delinquencies going up right now just with these curves with our average customers. And so, it's a means to make our rate base sustainable. Same point in time, remain competitive, so we retain our outside base. And then we believe that we're getting some kickback from our senior citizens. And oh my gosh, my bills been $20 a month now you're going to put me up at $50 a month. I ain't going to be able to afford to do that. And the county has had that experience thus far, and we can point. The county's got the same rate base that we've got, literally. You know, there still are poor people out in the county, and they're finding a way to basically make that payment. But well, by doing this process, as I kind of mentioned, we're sheltering basically the people that really have the highest risk, and that is a person at the poverty level that has a relatively large family. And so we're hope that this will work. And then this just as the last thing is a relationship to the median household income. This line here is the 2% of median household income with no growth. In other words, we just stay right to $50. And that construction program basically takes us up that we'll be well above that for the charge. If we see the growth that we projected, then what will happen is that we will keep this whole thing affordable. So part of our integrated plan issues and kind of the next phase we're at is another draft revision from our attorneys that are working, you know, with the EPA attorneys to try to come up with the terms of this thing. And what we need to have is, in the integrated plan, I think gives us the vehicle for it, is that, you know, we know that we can do our work up through the wastewater treatment plant. We've already committed to Ohio EPA. It's in our NPDES permit. We're going to spend those dollars. We're going to spend $30 million doing that work. But 6 years down the line, this basin, that $40 million basin, is going to come due. And basically, we're going to do the engineering design, so the actual engineering design, and we're going to get it to where we know exactly what that thing cost. But at the point in time that we look and we don't see that we've got that growth curve, and we haven't seen the affordability, we haven't seen the resources of the community capable of covering that, then we're going to go back to the agency through the integrated plan process and say, look, we need a reopener, we need some adaptive engineering, we need some means to basically make this thing work. And what, as I've described it, is that if we start compounding our debt service, that's the whole issue here. If Congress would step up and even provide us, quite frankly, if Congress would step up and provide us zero-cost loans, you know, where we just had to pay the principal off, a whole lot would be done, let alone just the grant process, and I don't think that's going to happen. But it's basically a function that says if we have to basically compound our debt service, then we're going to take those numbers and push this thing way out to where we're going to have serious, significant economic and social impact on our community. So the integrated plan is the vehicle, I think, that we believe through the Conference of Mayors, through NACWA, through the Water Environment Federation, you know, all the various areas that we're engaged in this process to basically say, this is how this thing can work. And I kind of, again, attribute it to as like, you know, if I want a new car, my wife wants a new car, my kid wants a new car, by the time that I get done buying probably the first new car, I don't have any money for that second new car, let alone the third. And that's what I see here, is that for us, it's called, if we can in fact basically cover the debt for our plan improvements and that early work, and then we see some growth, then we'll pull the trigger immediately and say, we're going to do that base. We're going to spend another $40 million. We're going to basically commit this community to another 30 years of debt service. But if we don't see it, then we have to come back and still do it. That's when the problem occurs. So, and I think that's it. I went about 3 minutes over.
So he was 3 over. Really, we've heard 2 different cities here come to you and say, here's what we've done. Here's how we're looking at it. We've got our plan together. I really don't know where your city's at, but I'm sure you're somewhere along that same line of looking at what it is we're doing. We're finding, both of our cities are finding working with EPA is much better than working against them. We've taken our plans, we've taken our amount of monies that we have to spend and say, where can we get the best bang for the buck? And I think that's the important thing when we come here today, is for all of us here to say, you know, we want clean air, we want clean water, but it has to be affordable. And I think that it's recognized from state level, it's recognized federal level. Our representatives here take that message back from each of our cities. There's acts before Congress now by the senators and congressmen to get us some help. One thing that EPA has recognized too, it isn't just the cities that are causing all the problems. It isn't us that's polluting the river and making it to the point to where we have to get into this. It's a lot of other sources. We recognize that they've recognized that the farming community could be a big part of that. These are things that in the past hadn't been really put on the people's plate at Congress to say, you know, there's more people out there polluting the river than just the city people. So with that, Paul, if you'd come forward Paul's from the compliance side, and where's my person from the DEFA side? Oh, there we are. Come forward. Something that we've done today, Trinka, if you come up too. Something we've done here is that we have District 5 EPA, we have Ohio EPA, both the compliance and the financial side, and we've got our representatives here. There is a representative I haven't recognized, and Marcy Capter's rep, Jane Rivo is in the back there. Yep. And another person that really needs to be recognized that's here today is Mark Bone. Mark, would you stand? He is the person that was kind of the initiator of what Columbus, Georgia did, where we got the idea. I guess maybe we're stealing your idea, but your concept is great. It's where we've come up with that other idea and thinking out of the box by going and looking at what they did. So I would invite each of you today to take the opportunity to talk to our reps, to maybe get an address change or maybe a phone number to where each of you could say, when my community's ready, when we're ready to talk and we're ready to do things, let's get together and do them. I think that's going to be the way that we're all going to save money. I think it's the way we're all going to save our Great Lakes, and it's the way that we'll all be able to comply with what we're being asked to do. So I thank everybody that's came here today, and I'd just like to have a final comment from our EPA reps, if they would, and just give us a little idea of what your thinking is, maybe. Either one.
Well, good afternoon. I guess it's afternoon now. As the mayor mentioned, my name's Paul Novak, and I work at Ohio EPA Division of Surface Water. And during break, it was interesting. There was 3 or 4 of us standing around, and each of us had a slightly different opinion of what integrated planning means and what's the integrated approach. From my perspective, having dealt with a lot of the communities in Northwest Ohio and across the state, to me, integrated planning really means working together to address the problems. And there's 2 parts to that. That's working together, both the agency and the agencies, as well as the community, and then addressing the problems. It means moving forward with approaches to address problems, prioritizing those approaches, and maybe we move forward on approaches or solutions before we actually know exactly what we want to do with the entire system. And I would just add, it's not a new approach in the state. We have used it. We've used it with different communities. A good example is the City of Springfield. We don't have a consent agreement with them. They have a very large combined sewer system. But what we did early on is we said, look, we know that we could install some projects here. We agree on some of the projects. And it's likely that by installing those projects, we'll reduce half of the combined sewer overflow. And so we put that in their NPDES permit. That treatment system's under construction right now and should be done in a year or so. And that, along with some other projects. I mentioned Springfield, City of Newark, the same thing, City of Lancaster. We weren't really sure exactly what we needed to do with the entire system, but we made decisions, and we knew that there were some projects that would have a substantial impact on water quality and a substantial reduction in combined sewer overflow. And so we tried to move forward on those projects. And so from my perspective, again, integrated planning approach means let's address the problem sooner rather than later, if we can, and identify projects, and let's work together to do that. So, thank you.
I'm Kevin Spurbeck of the Ohio EPA Division of Environmental and Financial Assistance. Just a couple of things real quick. Basically what Paul said is what we try to do. We've worked with Defiance quite a bit here in the last few years trying to figure out more cost-effective ways to treat the sewage, the combined sewer overflows and whatnot. We kind of piggyback on what Paul does. If we make sure that they're comfortable with it, and we will review the same type of stuff. One thing I want to point out is we look at affordability in our loans, and if it's at the benchmark or whatnot, we ask if the public's been informed and what kind of public participation you've had, and make sure that people are comfortable with what the rates are. Of course, nobody's comfortable with any rates, but we try to make it affordable for folks. One thing I do want to point out, the funding, the last couple years our appropriations from Congress have decreased, so there's less money available coming from the feds for us to loan out to communities. We do bond to get money, extra funds out to loan to communities, but that of course hurts the fund in the long run, so any extra money we get from those folks is appreciated. Also, that less appropriation grants from the feds means that we have less money in our principal forgiveness program, which they instituted a couple years ago. We can only use a certain percentage of that money as principal forgiveness, basically grants to communities to do this type of stuff. So we're struggling with trying to get the money out there at a reduced rate, at a low enough rate to make this stuff affordable too. But I think working with this integrated approach is a very good idea. We will work with you as much as possible. As the mayor says, get with us early, talk to us, explain the stuff to us. We are glad to come up to meet with any of the cities, communities, to talk about your problems and see what we can do for you and present our program and listen to what you have to say. And that's about it.
Thank you.
First of all, I wanted to thank the City of Defiance and Mayor Bob, and also the City of Lima for sharing their ideas. A couple of really nice examples of how working within your community and really understanding the commitments that you have under the Clean Water Act, as well as the needs of your community, and then working with us and Ohio EPA to work through the details really shows how we can take some of these ideas under integrated planning and put them to work. These are not easy projects. They're huge. They have a big impact on your communities, and so the more we can continue to work together, I think is really important, as Paul had indicated. To the extent that there are early action projects, I think those are great ideas as well, as long as we're making sure that we're picking projects that aren't going to cause you to have to do any kind of redo, because that's certainly not a good thing to have to do, because you may be expending dollars that you don't have. So important to make sure it fits into the big picture. And then finally, these are your communities, and you know them best. You know what you need, and we certainly can work with you, and Ohio EPA can work with you regarding the Clean Water Act requirements, but in the end, I think you have a lot of good ideas about what's going to work in your particular community, and it's probably different across the board depending on what you have in your community. Some of you are on the lake, some of you are in large rivers, some of you are in small rivers, and all of those things will come into play. And so my message is to keep up the good work, keep thinking those really cool new ideas, and then don't forget to keep us in the loop early on so that we don't have to run really fast to catch up. So thank you.
Thanks, Tinka. This is a Marble Pig event. Marble Pig is an organization that definitely deals with the river waters and all of our basin, our three-state basin here. And so we work regularly on these type of issues. keep in contact regularly with our representatives and with EPA on what it is that we're doing. So today's meeting, I hope, was very informational for you. I hope you took something out of this that you can take back home and say, you know, I saw two good examples of what two cities were doing. I know we're in line. We got to get ours done. But there's people there that will work with us. So with that, I would, if there are no questions or any comments that'd like to be made, I would call us adjourn. And I think we did it about on time. So thanks again, everybody, for coming.
Mm-hmm.